I think Cornette would mostly just point to fucking the dog as a bad idea rather than morally reprehensible.
I think his problem with it, like, whereas Vince Russo would be really excited about getting some dogs on screen, a different kind of action. It's real, man. Dogs are real. Jim Cornette's angle will be closer to, you expect me to believe that this little hair pint-sized poodle dog can get in a legitimate sports competition with this full-size human man? Bullshit!
You're exposed to the business. I hope you fucking die.
That would be his problem before PETA hijacked events with a shooting.
What's really interesting about the fucking Kennel from Hell match is you watch interviews, like contemporary interviews of Al Snow, just talking about the business and just how well he understands it, and how interesting the things he has to say about it are. And just like the ins and outs, and just like what he thinks about, you know, fans and their relationship to the business, and what he thinks about, you know, how heat works, and he understands it like he's a fucking PhD. And then you learn that he booked the fucking Kennel from Hell match.
Incredible.
Now, granted, that was 20 years ago.
If Al Snow's a perfect fucking teacher, maybe he's just the ultimate version of those who can't do teach maxim.
Could fucking be.
Like sometimes instead of ending up as one of the lesser teachers on Community, you just book the Kennel from Hell match, and then here we are. I kind of just want to meet the wide-eyed young Hollywood actor who hadn't heard much about this wrestling stuff, but really wanted to get into it, and then wrote Bayley, This Is Your Life, and then just walked backstage to find both Bayley and Alexa Bliss just having that fucking crying Wojak face people like to put in memes and shit.
Wait, hold on. I'm missing something here. This might have been an episode that I missed.
So this was a wrestling promo. They did it twice. The second time was actually the problem. I think the first time was just some, like, whatever kind of thing, eye roll. But the second time, if I'm not Alzheimerizing out here, which is very possible, they had Alexa Bliss come out and summarize some made-up bullshit about Bayley's early life. Okay, whatever, in this slideshow presentation. Already stupid, but, like, the normal wavelength of stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Then she brought out someone that was supposed to be, like, Bayley's first boyfriend for the implication that Bayley was a virgin.
Well, that's tasteless.
I think the real thing about it is not so much the tastelessness, which is very present, but it just asks you to believe multiple things. I mean, maybe Jim Cornette is a fuckboy. It just asks me to buy certain things that are just wrong. This matters to this professional fighter.
It's actually a very nice encapsulation of everything that I kind of fucking hated about the women's division. That thankfully, they're not doing that so much anymore, which was just the fucking Mean Girls bullshit.
Were you waiting for someone to slam a fucking locker every time they pivoted down the hallway? Because that's the kind of feeling I got.
It did nothing to elevate the competition whatsoever. It made it very almost impossible to take seriously everything they were doing because they refused to portray these women as athletes. They instead portrayed them as 16-year-olds. And it just made all of the consequences of everything feel like so much less. It harmed the credibility of every fucking title in that division because they would not stop doing that for like 2 years. It was bad.
It was not a good look. I mean, it really shows you what incrementalism in motion looks like, because the weird thing about that whole era is you have to imagine that 16-year-old thing as just a complete unilateral improvement over people just slapping each other in the mud.
It's weird, right? Like fucking like
you have to imagine someone turning that on and sniffling and wiping a tear in their eyes as they watch the light of progress.
Just fucking kicking and screaming, dragged into the 21st century. Honest to fucking God. Here's the thing. I did get bored of the man, Becky Lynch, but good God, I now recognize in retrospect what she did for that division.
Do you know what an achievement it was to build a mediocre character in that environment? The fucking travails you had to go through to become a generic tough guy. That's fucking art. Good for her.
I wonder how long people had to beg Vince McMahon, please, just like, I don't know, do like a fucking Stone Cold angle or something.
Please, we'll let you do literally the same thing again.
No, listen. It's called the Burn Book, right?
It's such good shit. It's such good shit.
And then what happens is that Regina publishes it. She hands it out. She tears all the pages out and she lets everyone see it, right? And then it causes chaos. It's like, well, it's good shit. What if we book the next Women's Royal Rumble like that? What if there was a Burn Book that we introduced?
Lohan's a redhead. Becky's a redhead. Know what I'm saying? I'm pregnant. Screwed again!
Oh.
And that's my new fan continuity of that bullshit.
I do not believe that it was his idea to pivot away from the high school bullshit. I think someone had to fucking get down on their hands and knees and beg him.
You know whose fucking idea it was? The XFL's fucking idea.
I have a headache.
Fair enough.
Already, and we're not even fucking talking about anime yet. Truthfully, we're not technically... we're not really talking about anime in this episode at all, as
it's 1 degree removed. There was a concept I had while I was walking around looking at the flaming ruins around me that was once New York, and thought, you know what this imitation of a city that I know reminds me of? The fucking live action anime films I've seen come out of Japan and America, and I'm sure other places, but I've only seen the two formed in these two cinematic bubbles.
Oh, we gotta find the Italian ones. Those are probably fascinating.
Oh, I'm sure that is an entirely different breed of fucking magic. So we did 2 movies this time because, you know, spice of life. There are a lot of like live action J-drama series that are adapted from anime. I know there's a Kaguya-sama one that we...
Oh, let's just name one that was halfway popular. There's a live action J-drama.
Yeah. And I also remember from my the depths of my college irony watching days, which haven't really faded. I just don't have class interrupting it anymore. They'd had a whole live action Sailor Moon show called Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, and boy, if you thought that shit felt silly when it was animated, it was doubly so. When you have someone saying those lines in motion.
I think we're gonna be finding that for the first half of this episode, there's just going to be a drinking game where I'm going to say one of 2 phrases. The first one being production value, and the second phrase being taxidermy. And you're going to take a drink, you at home, and hopefully by the time we get to part 2, you will be too drunk to care about my sort of half-hearted defense of Netflix Death Note.
I'm on a similar tile on one, the opposite tile on the other, and I'm a fan of suspense. So I'm gonna let you see my opinions unfold in real time like a kaleidoscopic piece of art. But yeah, we did the Full Metal fucking Alchemist movie.
Or Netflix, Warner Brothers, whatever the fuck, Full Metal Alchemist movie.
So, because this is a war crime, maybe we shouldn't say the Netflix one, because I don't think Netflix didn't produce it, right? They just circulated this shit in America.
I don't fucking know.
I don't fucking care either. But the point is, it exists. It's on Netflix.
And I think we're talking about it for a couple of reasons. A, it came out within a few months of Netflix Death Note. B, for whatever reason, everyone was real excited for it, even though they've been doing shit like this for the last 20 years, and there was really...
It's because when things are in the fucking hype circuit, fans are attached to this idea of accuracy in adaptations, and in fucking social studies class, you know when they teach you what the difference between like the letter of the law and the spirit of the law? That is the fucking thing they just cannot grok when it comes to these things, and it is why this movie sinks like a fucking boat made of... I don't even have a simile. I'm Dennard Dayle, and I don't have a simile. I entered a like or as thing. I could have said something about, I don't know, high school or butts or explosions, but the Full Metal Alchemist has just fucked my brain up.
Yeah. All right. So, before we begin, I don't know. I don't want to create an image in your minds that this is all just like fucking nerd rage, because I wanted to mention that, yeah, Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood are like some of my favorite media that's ever been produced, you know, like not just in anime, but anywhere. It is, I think, one of the most perfect stories that I have ever consumed, right? Mm-hmm. Just in terms of just every fucking beat being like right the fuck there. They close the loop on everything. All of the character notes make sense. All of the character arcs are complete. Everything just fucking works.
It might be the best strict shonen I've run across.
It is a machine that works at so very close to 100% efficiency. You'd think it were impossible, but it's not. And because they fucking did it. Right? So bona fides out of the way. Not bona fides, but like, just disclaimer. Yes, I am that big of a fan. And yeah, my being that big of a fan might have affected how I saw this, but honestly, I never felt myself too amazingly angry while I was watching this film. I found myself more just tired. I felt tired because nothing I saw before me was surprising, because I've seen live action adaptations of anime produced in Japan by, the Japanese film industry, or I don't know. It almost seems like they exist outside of the Japanese film industry, because I've seen competent films come out of Japan. It's not like they're lacking for half-decent directors.
I don't know if whatever fucking mafia boss that backs you Bowles video game movies is involved in these fucks, but something weird is going on. Either financially, criminally, or just fucking psychologically on someone's part, but
yeah,
I guess
I don't know.
Honestly, I think we might be writing on some presumed norms here. So, just for the sake of general interest, even though this is called Weeaboo Hell, I'm just gonna briefly go over the concept of Full Metal Alchemist.
Sure, go for it.
Alright, so... Oh my god, I feel like I'm wasting my goddamn time.
Okay. Well, we're gonna talk about wasting time here, because, I do too, for a different reason.
Alright, whatever. Full Metal Alchemist is essentially the sort of love baby of, a sort of crunchy fantasy novel and a shonen sort of battle thing, right? And the whole fantasy hook here is that there are these alchemists who can just sort of, change their environment with this thing called equivalent exchange, yada yada yada. Okay, well, again, I'm summarizing Full Metal Alchemist on a fucking anime podcast. Should I just, start going over the fucking alphabet too? Did you know that Y comes after X? I'm full of these gems of wisdom for a new generation. Anyway, the point is this kid and his brother tried to bring back their mom, and they have to learn to cope with the fucking loss, and there's a whole conspiracy thing. Don't trust your fascist government. It's cool. It's a good time.
It's very good. One of the things that I love the most about it is that it is a shonen fighting series, and pretty much the one shonen fighting series of which I know where the main character is never ever described as, shown to be, or even implied to be the best, strongest there is. He is outclassed basically everywhere he turns in that series by people who are more good at killing people than he is. He actually has a soft no-kill policy. He never ends anyone's life throughout the entire show, comic show, whatever. He, just describes, nope, I'm not killing anyone, whenever the option arises. It's never, hand-wrung or anything like that. He just doesn't.
Yeah, the thing has an idealistic core, which, I don't know, whether you agree or disagree with that as a sort of practical philosophical maxim, I'd tend to just ride with how well each series makes its argument for or against that kind of ish. It sort of rings true to itself, if that makes sense.
What I liked about Ed Elric is the fact that he was just the kind of guy who he was just gonna find a better way. Because he always just seemed to recognize, he seemed to actually have some sort of disdain towards lethal violence, just thinking it's like, no, that's how an idiot would solve this problem. And then he would go and find a better way to solve the problem. And that was what I liked about him. He was smart. Because
it did a good job of sort of playing with the rewards and downsides of that approach.
Well, what I was getting at is the fact that he's not the strongest fighter ever, or he's not ever described to be the strongest fighter, nor is he shown to be the strongest fighter. He's just the smartest guy, and that's how he wins.
So
now,
notice in the summary we're doing here, when we describe what Full Metal Alchemist is, what I'm not giving you is a list of names, panel shots, specific fucking actions, because that would sort of almost be missing the point of the thing in a way, right?
Except
now, once again, I was talking about this fucking spirit versus letter of the law. Now, out of all the adaptations of things I've seen, this movie, to not its credit, just is a thing, is maybe the most dedicated to just recreating specific images in the thing, with occasionally just transcribed lines of
they can
literal
manage.
Dialogue, assembled by someone who had no idea what the fuck any of it meant or why.
It's strange, almost to an uncanny valley, level, just watching all of these, iconic scenes, right, play out. Because this movie is less of a cohesive movie, right, that has a beginning, middle, and end, than it is just a highlight reel from like the first quarter, third or so of the Full Metal Alchemist manga/anime, specifically.
So if you haven't watched, a trick shot montage in a while, I guess we've got you fucking covered.
You could, I suppose. These moments, right? These iconic moments, capitalized, are strung together with a thin sort of, I guess you could call it, plot.
There are events.
There are like events that happen. There are words that are exchanged that sort of move one scene to another without really that much care taken to sort of understand what made the original series work so well.
Yeah.
And I want to start with, do we want to start with this thing's look? Because that's pretty inescapable.
The look
right there
is a major symptom, and I think that's as fine a place to start as any. When I talk literalism, right? Alphonse is this character who's like this animated suit of armor, whatever, long story. This movie, they have like this cheap CGI thing that has the exact shape of the thing and just looks like trash. I do not know why they chose to do it that way.
Well, it has absolutely no physicality. Like, you're so aware of how fake it is that it has no weight within the space that it's inhabiting. And whenever it interacts with something that does actually exists, like he has a fight with Ed, halfway through the movie, and it is the most take you out of it bullshit that they could possibly have shown us, because for not a goddamn second do you believe that this, talking suit of armor is actually there, right? It's like
it's its lack of motion. It's in that weird CGI uncanny valley where,
I know how to describe it. It's, remember the last Airbender movie from around like a decade ago or so?
Against my will, I do remember that film.
Yeah. And how the actor playing Aang just always looked like he was in front of a green screen, even if he wasn't.
Yeah.
Alphonse Elric in this movie, it's almost like the inverse of that. He's like a green screen that wanders onto the set.
And it's not that I'm as attached to getting the specific element right, because I don't know if everything else in this movie gunned along and that looked bad or accurate or inaccurate, that'd be fine. But it's very symptomatic of the way everything else looks and feels in this movie.
Yeah, that's just the CGI.
And that's just the CGI. This movie really just refuses to acknowledge the change in medium. Like, I don't know, if you're a fucking fancy pants schoolboy, you might have heard of like Marshall McLuhan, media theory, all that shit. This guy would always say like the medium is the message, right? And it's part of the thing of an adaptation. There are things that work in one whole that don't work in the other, and when you try to adapt something, you need to make those changes. Like, example.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that don't make sense, like, if you just lay it out, but make sense within the medium or the genre. Like, the way people talk in a lot of action anime, two people often just sort of talk at each other while everyone else is sort of sideline themselves like RPG party members. And that's not a dig, because we just sort of accepted that within the mode, right? But when you make the fucking movie, you can't do that, because these physical people are standing in space in this limited run environment, and this entire time I'm wondering if the other characters are stroking out.
Well, we're getting into the script now. Just on the visual level, I'll start with my super sticky hot take, which is to say that this movie looks like a whole bunch of cosplayers filmed it on the way back to the hotel from the con.
One time I went to I'm confusing New York Anime Fest and Anime NYC. I've been to fucking both. But I saw a short film, just some fucking bored-ass cosplayer. Maybe it was like a comedy troupe kind of thing I'd put together. And this bit of parody media, whatever, legitimately was easier to look at and better shot than most.
Oh, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah, no, it was. Well, here's the thing. When these manga/anime adaptations are made in Japan, right? Great care, for whatever reason, is taken to transplant the exact look of the character design and production design of the series to this live action format, at least insofar as the costume design. But the problem is that when you have everything looking as close to the manga or anime as possible, there's no thought given to the breaks from reality that you can get away with in those mediums, but that you cannot get away with in film. For instance, there's this. Here's like a really great example. Alphonse's character design, right? In both the manga and this, awful adaptation, he has this little tabard that he kind of wears around his waist, right? And it's just drawn to be white in the anime / manga, right? So that's like fine, whatever. What you are getting from this, right? What you are decoding from this is that, okay, yeah, it's white or something. It's a piece of white fabric. And it's never drawn to be like too amazingly detailed or dirtied or anything like that, except it is just stark fucking white in the live action in a way that is
solar flare he carries around.
In a way that is disconcerting and unrealistic because, in a live action context, right, where things have, physicality and form to them, right? There's no way that this wouldn't have, I don't know, some fucking dirt on it. The same goes for
we're not
the
arguing that this shouldn't be over the top. It can and should be, but like, I actually have an example of an area where they chose to like once again be fucking literal instead of taking advantage of like the space they're in a way that it bugged me particularly. I think this bugged me more than you. I think you were more bugged by how everything dragged because it's 2 hours and 15 minutes long for reasons that are beyond me as a fucking human being.
I'll get to that because I have my own problems with this thing's runtime and what they did with that runtime.
But this fucking scene now, so there is this whole thing that keeps happening throughout the series. I think it happens like fucking 12 times, so it's a big thing, but they enter basically the physical space or representation of it that God lives in, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, gamble amongst yourselves how literal it is or isn't in the fucking comic. But in the comic, it renders in this sort of cool way where it's basically this abstract outline of a kid that sometimes pops people's body parts on because people trade their body parts in for shit. There's a lot of shit we didn't summarize here. So the thing that this fucking movie does is that it tries to just render that kid as drawn, and that drives me insane because a director was handed a script that says, in this scene, a man meets malevolent God, and makes no effort to put any spin on that of his own. Like, can you imagine a freshman film student being handed that outline, not putting like any kind of like visual or abstract or literal fucking spin on that? Like, I don't know how you can manually extract.
Well, I don't mean to nitpick, but less malevolent God than coldly indifferent / objective God. But go on.
The thing still stands, there are things you can do, things that have been done. You could have ripped off a better movie.
I think that was the one specific aspect of this thing's taxidermy. There it is. That bothered you. For me, it was both the fucking tabard that Al wears, but that's like, a CGI issue, right? As far as costume design goes, the fucking military uniforms, right? Which are designed, again, to have as much fidelity to the design from the show as possible. And it's just like they never learned their lesson from, let's say, American superhero movies. Mm-hmm. Now, I might be trudging into dangerous waters here because a whole lot of people have, feelings about American superhero movies and not all of them good. However, as far as production design goes, I have always thought that Nolan's Batman films, most of the Marvel films do a very good job of taking, a costume that works in the context of a comic book, 2D medium, drawn, figuring out, the spirit of the design and then translating that to a physical space where you cannot have people running around in spandex because that'd look fucking stupid, but you do not want them to be just wearing black leather and, still calling themselves the X-Men.
There were some growing pains in that space.
Yeah, I was not too into the costume designs for the first couple Singer films.
Because it didn't exist, but that's something that
I think, yeah. So where I'm at with this then, is that it takes a certain amount of creativity, I suppose, to take that spirit and render it into the medium that you were working with. And this is creativity that was never shown in this movie, nor in other movies of its kind, or television dramas of its kind, because the medium is just never considered in that way. It is never respected in that way because they are not. That's not what their mission is. Their mission is recognition or brand recognition specifically.
Yeah, they really want that fucking Mad Men nostalgia speech to seep into your brain.
And it just makes for a less successful movie. Like, I think they're fucking themselves here because I think people would have enjoyed this movie a little bit more if it had taken a couple creative liberties in moving the art direction from a 2D space to a 3D space, and considering, the things that you would have to do in order to make that, believable to look at,
yeah,
right?
Or at least it wouldn't have caused me a physical pain at one or two moments to sort of just look at the objects moving around on screen. Just Alphonse. I'm not talking like some kind of like spiritual wound because, oh, my beloved is being mistreated. No, I mean the fucking armor is hard to look at. But when it comes to how this movie looks, I want to make 2 points before we move on to this movie's brain problems, which is just... First off, I just want to talk about the peak of the sort of failed visual aesthetic videos. There was one that was very funny, and I shouldn't say that I didn't enjoy anything about this movie, because sort of seeing how it did this sort of filled my heart with light and laughter. When we get to its version of sort of mannequin soldiers, like the fucking artificial people.
Oh, the fucking PS2 cutscene motherfuckers? Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, like fucking Barrett entering a Shinra facility looking motherfuckers. It's not a good look. If some things look fake or plastic... These things, it looked like someone tried to CGI a Play-Doh creation.
It looked like fucking Xavier Renegade Angel.
Yeah. I was
for a
looking
second
for the
there.
snake hand in that mother.
It looked a little bit like Xavier Renegade Angel, which works because of how horrifying it looks. I'm going to compare it, kind of not charitably, to the 1999 Mummy film, which is a very, very good film that I like, and the CGI has not aged too particularly gracefully. But it's the same sort of just, monster that's supposed to be scary, kind of shambling about awkwardly, kind of on the screen, but not really in the world that it's supposed to be inhabiting. Except there's hundreds of them.
Good point. This movie did need more Godsmack, like the Scorpion King. Like, how do we know who stands alone? Evidently Ed, because Alphonse is sort of expensive for them to keep up in this movie, despite not looking that great. Which is...
Oh yeah, he's barely there.
Really kind of funny in its own way.
It's really fun. No, I almost imagine this sitcom scenario because, for the record, Al barely even in this movie. He's shoved off to the sidelines as often as they can get away with it, just because I guess I'm imagining the sitcom scenario in this thing where a boardroom, right? Because you can goddamn bet that this was
the committee
a
was
board
right
approved
involved.
movie. Yeah, written by committee. Yeah, is showing what they have come up with for Alphonse Elric, and then in unison they tell this guy that looks like shit.
What the fuck
and then
have you done?
And then despairing he screams, "But it cost $50 million." And
damn it. I really wish this wasn't a Japanese production so I could make a suicide joke, but now it feels racist.
Oh man. Speaking of the there's this uncomfortable thing because we're still talking about the look of this thing, right? There's this uncomfortable thing with wigs in this movie.
They've got a problem.
Not so much with wigs. I'm just gonna shorthand it by saying it's a wig problem, because you've got all of these characters who are, in the source material understood to be
the place is like
Europe.
Magic Germany.
It's not Europe, but it's Magic Germany, right? And they're sort of taking this half-assed approach to making them look like they're from Magic Germany, and this takes the form of the lead actor wearing a reshoot wig.
Which again is a hilarious consequence of fucking literalism. Like, it would have been better to just pivot into them being of a different biome.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like that's what I'm saying about, them fucking up the costume design this bad.
Towards like my last visual point I want to get at, which is just characters are more than haircuts.
Characters are more than haircuts, and maybe instead of Nazi Germany, you could have recalled Imperial Japan. Okay, maybe you couldn't. Maybe that would have been a little bit uncomfortable. But
oh man, I can imagine the marching.
But maybe instead of trying to
this film is not available
trying to
in
have
your region.
half-assedly convince me that these people live in and are from fantasy, Bavaria. Maybe you could sort of alter the setting a little bit to make that whole bit less awkward. Maybe you could just... It's fine. It can be Asia or fantasy Asia or whatever. And you could, have the... Yeah, you can have the costume designs have nods to the, very European military-looking designs that they have in the show.
Is?
But,
Speaking of things of a rightist persuasion, this is the fucking monkey's paw manifestation of just every fucking chud saying, man, I really wish they adapted this shit for real and then changed things around to fit the fucking, I don't know, feminazi monster of the week. And then here is just the most point-for-point mechanically walked through highlight reel of the original material, whereas simultaneously just missing every point. By the way, earlier when he was talking about this as a sort of highlight reel, you might think like, hey, wait, you like what happens in it, why doesn't that work? Well, for one thing, once again, we're in a fucking movie, so when you try to cover all of the arc ground of half of a long-running series, you don't actually get into anything in an interesting way. Like, you just scout over, you just like bump over things. Like, I remember I was interested in the whole Shao Tucker plotline as I originally watched / read it. I was interested in all the Dr. Marco stuff.
Yeah,
and here it's like, hey, here's a guy named Marco. Hey, here's a guy named Tucker. Oh, look, Riza. How she has a nice hair bun thing. Oh shit, Hughes is dead.
Yeah,
you feel things, right? Do you feel things? How much do you feel?
We demand that you feel. Yeah. You know what it kind of feels like is that there's this, I don't know if I'm referencing one thing or a trope, but just sort of kidnapping your favorite actor and making him perform all of the scenes from your favorite movies that he's in.
Oh man,
it's like Misery. I mean, I guess that's a writer, but sort of same situation. You're watching all of these scenes, right? That, you so loved when they were there in the in the comic or in the show, right? And you're watching them so fucking drained of any meaning or poignancy or impact, right? By the fact that A, none of these fucking people can act.
Oh, it's bad.
B, this is directed so fucking incompetently, it makes fucking network television look like Scorsese.
Yeah, if the guy who directs an episode of Bing Bong, if one of those episodes looked like this, he would have a drinking problem right now, just from the sheer moral guilt of not even being able to deliver the fucking Bing Bong aesthetic. It's like everything is even just too fucking dark, like a fucking film school. I keep saying film school, like people aren't being taught how to do better than this every day. Like, it's honestly not fair to film schools that I keep fucking saying that. I should be sending fucking the New York Film Academy some fucking reparations checks because I keep on trampling over their good name.
I've been using the term taxidermy, right? I mean that almost literally because what you were watching, right, is dead. It has been dead and sterilized and it's stiff and unmoving, right? Just like a taxidermy.
Yeah.
So while it does look like the Thing, I guess, and not even a whole lot like the Thing because of the stupid fucking reshoot wigs that half the cast are wearing,
they are.
It's still recognizably
obnoxious.
Dead. If I might just kind of get a little bit petty here for a second.
Dude, I live for pettiness. I was born petty. I'll die petty.
I just fucking... There's this little fucking thing that I hated that it just made me say just, oh, fuck you. Which is, So Winry, right? You know Winry, right? This is a fucking Weeaboo
Yeah.
podcast. You all know who Winry is. I don't need to fucking explain to you who Winry is, right? So she's, kind of best known for, her comedic outbursts at Ed. And it is her automail that he is, wearing around, and he's always fucking it up because he's always getting himself into trouble, right? And I swear to fucking God, they try to recreate one of these outbursts, and I think it is the low point of the film because it is the most cringy fucking 15 seconds of this
I
thing.
think it's why I was drawn to the fucking anime festival example, because I swear to God, like, this 16-year-old kid who has never acted a day in her fucking life did a better job of shouting the word baka and hitting someone with a fucking plush toy than this professional actress being paid to do this in a movie that is going to be seen by people that she's going to put on a reel and say, hire me in other films.
I'm finding myself wondering who to blame. Like, do I blame her? Do I blame, the director here for directing her to be like this? Do I blame the editor for just not knowing when the fuck to cut?
Not to go
I don't know.
full fucking commie posting, even though I know it's Weeaboo Hell episode 9. For some reason, even though Sam feels more strongly, I always break first. I think I just have a self-control problem, but really, it's the fucking Gibbons that there's a lineage of these movies. Like, this wasn't one of the earliest examples of these fucking taxidermy films. So, because there is a lineage of these movies, you just have to at some point blame the Gibbons eating this shit.
So here's the thing. I don't really have the numbers in front of me right now. But there's a part of me, like a pretty significantly large part of me that has his doubts that anyone even fucking does. And that this is not just some producers-esque sort of situation where it doesn't matter if it doesn't make money. There's some weird fucking tax shit going on. And then I start thinking about, like, if the Yakuza or the Nigerian mob are involved.
The Nigerian mob isn't quite so sophisticated in their approach over in Kabukicho, Domi. They're up to
perhaps not
baser pursuits. Oh, so one last petty note, just so that you understand, just another layer of the problem with the sort of literalism in adaptation. I'm gonna talk about one thing I don't fucking like in the original Full Metal Alchemist that makes it into this movie fully intact with new problems. You know what I don't like?
What's that?
I don't like less dumb fucking superpower. Death nails keep popping up in things. I think they're fucking dumb every time. And boy, if I thought they looked bad in a comic book or in an anime, in this movie, the extendo death nails look bad.
Well, here's where I'm at with this. Lust, right? In Full Metal Alchemist, the manga anime, right? She lives up to her name, right? She's
Comely?
No, it's that she has a whole bunch of implied sexual relationships with various different men, and that is sort of how she gets people in the right position that she need, like right where she fucking needs them, so that they can be used and done away with, right? Here, she and the other homunculi just kind of show up so that they can be there. Like, hi, it's us, the homunculi. You might remember me from such series as Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Featuring Dante
right?
from Devil
And you're
May
supposed
Cry.
to, like clap like a fucking wind-up monkey with cymbals.
I don't know why I went with a seal when you said monkey, but I was thinking of a seal.
That's fine. Seals clap. And she just wanders on this thing, devoid of motivation or malice, really, because that's what I kind of liked about Lust in in the source material, is that she's just this intensely fucking hateful being. Like, there's nothing redeemable at all about her. She's just the fucking worst, most evil thing. and is until the fucking second she dies. And none of that comes across in this. It's not even like they try to make her redeemable like they did with the 2003 anime. She's just kind of there. She kind of reads her lines, and then they do this.
It escapes me how something can be such an direct airlift
really
of
shitty effect shot.
None of what actually made it mean anything like runs through. Honestly, we're talking about the side characters when the main dude has a lot of like punky appeal to him in the core material, and somehow none of that translates.
None. Well, I think I knew that we were in for a rough go of it really early on in the film when there's this kind of cold open, after a drawn out origin sequence. Actually, that's what I knew. There's a cold open after a drawn out origin sequence where they're fighting, I guess Father Cornello or something in Lior, as they did in the first arc of the manga. Father Fornello. And I almost feel like it's not even called Lior in this. It's called Riol, and then everything else is called exactly what it was. I could be talking out of my ass. Maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. Whatever. And he fights and defeats Cornello just like anyone else would by, fighting him the hardest. And we are then just right out the bat, 10 minutes into this movie, robbed of everything that I was talking about that makes Ed such a compelling character, which is the fact that he does not beat, anyone on their own terms. He beats them by outthinking them. And he does not outthink anything in this movie, except for, I guess, there's this scene in the climax where they're trying to convince you that he has, figured out the homunculi and their weaknesses. But it's
I fucking love that moment.
But it's he's Sherlock smart in that moment, as I described last episode.
It's followed up by them Sherlock smart Mustang a little in a way that's even dumber, because he sees her death nails get broken and says like, you have a soft spot after all. And when you have that setup, you think, oh, he's going to try to exploit this stupid tactical weakness that she has with her shitty-ass death nail power. Sorry, I can't get past that. Okay. With her dumb fucking magic nail. I can get to my point, I promise. Please believe in me. Okay. So it makes it like, oh, he's going to reverse her nail-based DDT attack. Fuck. God damn it. This is what happens when you watch a 2-hour and 15-minute Full Metal Alchemist movie. Alright. Last fucking try. So they set it up like he's gonna think his way around her death nail attacks. Or interrupt them in a similar way. And instead he just fucking burns her like everything else. Just strategy 1, mash B button.
Well, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because that's how he fucking did it in the
fucking frame
source material. Oh yeah, no, and it's framed, in a shitty way. My fucking issue, right, is the fact that so the first quarter, third, whatever of Full Metal Alchemist, right, is kind of halfway a detective story, as Ed and Al sort of navigate the ins and outs of the I guess Imperial, I don't know, the Amestrian bureaucracy. To try and, find all these things that have been hidden from them, including, the secret to, how to make a Philosopher's Stone, who, was involved in its production, where they're hiding, where they had
on pre-downfall 4chan, just whatever equivalent of the word secrets they had.
Yeah. And it was really cool, right? Because you got to see, these kids sort of like solve this big, conspiracy mystery that's been laid out before them, right? And they solve them. Like, they solve them, right? And in this, the scenes are connected by Ed going to a person, and then the person, doing an iconic scene, and then telling them where to go
homie,
next.
You gotta go to level 4.
And then that is what he does. And he just looks like the most pinball fucking idiot imaginable.
Yeah, you could really just imagine him walking around with that old Hanna-Barbera oboe playing behind him. Yeah, it's just weird that Edward Elric is pretty boy model number 5 in this, and I did not know that was possible, but
Maybe I have a whole lot to talk about. I'm going to talk about one or two more things. Promise, just one or two more things.
That's fine. I'm gonna try to stop saying death nails because it's becoming like a psychological compulsion at this point. It's like biting your nails, you know? And then you accidentally impale yourself on your death nails, or if you try to clean your face,
This little scene that kind of just broke my fucking mind, right? Was the iconic, with a fucking capital I, Hugh's death scene, right? One of the most infamous moments in not just Full Metal Alchemist, but honestly the history of anime.
Good luck getting a weeaboo into a fucking phone booth.
It's like fucking JFK or 9/11. Everyone remembers where they were when Hughes got shot, right? So you've got this scene, and the way that it plays out in the original source material is that Hughes, injured, goes to the phone booth to call Mustang to warn him, right? And then Envy shows up in the guise of Maria Ross. He makes her real fucking fast by, saying that her mole is on the wrong side of her face. And then Envy is like, oh, silly me. It's not really that big of a deal because she's still, she has him. She's going to fucking shoot him and kill him. But, it is known that this is Envy here, right? And then she kills him, complicating it just a little bit, just in an effort to amuse themselves and to fuck with Hughes one final time by transmuting themselves into his wife, right? And then shooting him like that, just so
quite the spot.
That they could see the horror in his eyes, right, as he dies. And the important thing that I want you to take from this is that it's not just Hughes who knows that it's Envy who just shot and killed him. It's you, the reader/viewer, who knows as well. In this film, right? Here's what they do.
Oh, it's very artful.
Here's what they fucking do, is that they do this scene. They do the scene where, Lust attacks him and injures him, impales him through the shoulder, and then he, he hobbles out into the phone booth to call Roy. He escapes the death nails. You said you were going to stop.
You can't make me.
He gets to the phone booth to call Roy, except surprise, there's Roy with a gun, and he fires, right? And that is all you're shown, right? That is all you're told. So, here's the thing. You've got this movie, right? This movie that is vapid fan service, that is hewing so, not just uncomfortably, but suffocatingly close to the source material in all things. I mean, changing things around sometimes to get it to fit in a 2-hour format, but we'll get to that. Hewing so taxidermically close to the source material in all things because it knows that you've seen this. It knows that you know everything that is going to happen, right? Because you've seen it happen before. And then they try to build a fucking twist into it? I don't get it.
It is, frankly, an incomprehensible move that makes their otherwise simple to at least follow stupid fucking movie. When it comes to weight and that scene, and the sort of fame that scene has.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a lot of hype that Tom Cruise is going to be shooting a sci-fi film in space. And it's really a shame that he's been beaten to making a completely weightless film. I didn't know you could take the sort of weight out of just a series of images that just have default, meaning in my brain. I don't know, this is like watching the fucking community theater version of Luke hanging off a goddamn bridge.
It's like it took actual fucking effort. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it just took so much effort the first time that you did, and it was done so deftly that you didn't even notice, right? So that it's when it's done incompetently this time, it becomes so much more clear. Although, I'm just sort of thinking about, I don't know, I've been rewatching Anohana, right? And, it's just fucking so easy, right? At the drop of a fucking, piece of music in that fucking show, just how quickly it gets the fucking waterworks going on me.
Yeah, it's almost like a good show. You almost got some fucking operant conditioning shit happening, and this movie does not match. It actively throws out the one thing that its fucking schizo-literalism could have bought it.
There's this point I wanted to raise, perhaps like the final point that I'd like to raise, which is all of this, recreating these things, all as they are, all of this was done for one reason, which is shallow, cynical fan service. Just the most cynical imaginable, right? And I honestly feel like I'm wasting my time explaining this fact because of how evident it is in every single fucking frame of this thing. Like, I don't know why we even needed to take a fucking hour to go into why this thing sucked.
Well, the reason that we had to take an hour to go into why this sucks is that Comedy Central already has the fucking copyright on just saying, it sucks, and ending the review there.
All right, sure. Yeah, this is as good a reason as any. Fuck it.
I'm going to jump off your final point here regarding this whole Hughes business.
Yeah.
With a sick little observation of my own. Perhaps less intelligent. Another one of the iconic scenes from Full Metal Alchemist is finding out, without going into too much detail, that someone has, like, effectively murdered his daughter and turned her into a monster. It's a character you knew and liked. And she's gone now.
People still make too soon jokes about it.
Here, right? So there's a scene. This guy has effectively murdered his daughter. And in this movie, because there's a visual fidelity, I am laughing my dick off. And I don't mean in like my fucking, haha, look how edgy I am, sort of Hitler AIDS 9/11 kind of way. I mean the image that they have created of this creature is funny by default, in spite of everything. And I just can't stop laughing. Looking at this.
Well, no, it looks like because this fucking
it's like a joke at a funeral.
Nina Alexander, like Chimera thing, right? The Nina Alexander Chimera that you know what it looks like. It fucking looks like it'd show up at the Amestris section of It's a Small World. It looks so fucking like
it's so good.
It looks so fucking like a goddamn animatronic from Disney
I'm actually
World.
gonna recommend if you want to get some joy in your life and things are hard right now for I want to say a good 43% of human beings. If you want some joy in your fucking biosphere, just look up this movie's version of that scene because the image is funny as shit. This fucking fake CGI dog man, it's great.
I think we did both bust a gut in that scene. I think it was perhaps a little bit more pronounced in your case, but I did laugh.
It was wild shit.
All right, we gotta use our time judiciously now and talk about the other film.
Yes.
Which
so
is
we got into the Netflix Death Note adaptation, which is a very different and very weird beast.
Well, what I wanted to do with this episode, right, was sort of tackle the ways in which the Japanese film industry approaches its terrible adaptations of anime, right? And then sort of look at how the American film industry does.
Yeah, and the American film industry, we're in really different territory in terms of bad adaptations because here, it's not even the cardinal sin of the movie. I have a different opinion on what doesn't work about this movie. But right off the bat, they said, fuck that, we're doing this now. On multiple fronts, structural fronts, character fronts, and...
Yeah, it's, it basically goes in the complete fucking opposite direction, for better or worse, that Full Metal Alchemist does. And for the record, it does not work as a movie. Just as a whole, I can't give it a passing grade, or at least not a very good grade. But I do want to, for a second, point out that it does have a beating heart. Now, this heart does have, several congenital defects. It's not making it past 25, no siree, but it does have a beating heart and something on its mind that is struggling to tell you. And it never really quite succeeds in doing so. Think like Johnny got his gun.
In terms of breaches of opinion or the growing Civil War Mark Millar rift growing between me and Sam, I kind of think this is just a dumb fucking movie.
It is dumb, certainly. It is full of fucking plot holes. It is full of fucking script issues. Specifically, like there's a whole lot of coincidences. Soon after his introduction, L kind of wanders into the police station where Light's dad works and says, you, Light's dad, I'll be working with you on this one. Which, and he does it basically cuz. This
Reasons.
very, conveniently puts him right the fuck next to Light in this investigation.
It would benefit us just lay some basic groundwork on what default Death Note is and what this movie broadly is.
Yeah, I mean, like, default Death Note is a shonen fighting anime where the fighting is information warfare. And no one is the strongest, they're the smartest.
It's sort of famous for its, I want to say almost its stylistic flourish. Like, it just renders all the information warfare stuff in a very keyed up, melodramatic way that works to its benefit on the whole.
Yeah, it is about people, instead of having fights with each other, playing mind games with each other. As
every time someone outsmarted someone on fucking The Shield or Breaking Bad or something, they just gave an operatic little King Lear monologue about, I've hidden the evidence of selling cocaine. It is done.
And it's so very well written and paced that you don't quite notice or care that these people are talking just in the volumes that they are. And I don't mean talking loud. I mean, oh man, they just don't stop talking ever.
It does something that I think we usually only credit straight action series with, which is just basically just codifying its own rules for how conflict works.
Yes, it does a very good job of that, in fact.
In the Death Note world, no one really just lucks into information or just beats the shit out of that guy. You have always been maneuvered into a corner, and you either counter thrust or fall into their keikaku.
So in abstract, right? Death Note, the manga anime, right? I'm gonna call it anime just because I don't know, I find the word easier to say. Death Note, the anime, right? Is a genius sociopath teenager, kind of conveniently, but like, hey, it's what kicks off the plot. Finds a Death Note. This is a weapon used by these things called Shinigami or death gods to extend their own lifespan, but one of them got bored one day because they don't really have that much else to do otherwise, and decided to throw it into the human world and see what would happen.
Yeah,
if
kids,
he
if
did.
the afterlife was exciting,
Light
no one
picks
would
it
want
up.
to die, you know?
Light picks it up and reads the rules, and it's got a ton, but the gist of it is that if you write down the name of a person in the Death Note and have, their face in your head as you do it, they will die. You could do a whole, fucking Genie in the Lamp scene about him explaining the rules, because there are a whole ton of them, but just in abstract, that is what it is. And Light is a self-righteous sociopath. Probably actually just a psychopath, honestly.
Yeah, the guy is essentially a messiah complex, sort of high-performing narcissist.
Who believes that he can create a better world.
And he then positions himself to be sort of abstractly worshipped as a literal god while trying to maintain his cover identity. And the powers that be have concerns. And it basically just leads him to a game of cat and mouse with our
Master Detective, L. Right? So that's Death Note, the anime. Death Note, the American live-action film, because they made a taxidermy film of Death Note, back in 15 years ago or so, and
same problem. We're not going to do the same fucking review twice. I'm sure.
I'm not fucking like getting into it, right?
It's not going to have like the dog scene, so why should I even bother?
It did have a real no. I'm not getting into it. This, right? Smart, fairly book smart, if kind of behavior blind teenager Light Turner, not Yagami, Turner.
Yeah, we are in the American. Would you say? Oh, is this like the Midwest, the Heartland? Oh no, it's in Seattle. It's in fucking Seattle.
It's literally Seattle. Yeah, is dropped this Death Note. Does not actually know what to make of it. Does not actually even seem to believe that it's real until one of these death gods, Ryuk, who's basically unchanged in terms of personality and look and role between both. He's the one constant throughout all this.
oddly the one sort of straight lift here. We have a disagreement about how well he carries over visually. I'm not against CGI, but I think if your budget's below a certain threshold, then I don't really see the point. It just looks goofy until you hit a certain, like, I don't know, what's the term they use in video games? AA, AAA kind of level. But before you hit that budget level, a lot of it just does not look right.
Well, what I did, here's the thing. I have learned, like, I did some research prior to this, is that he is CGI enhanced performance capture. Like, half of Ryuk that you see
I'm
is
using, like,
costume.
fucking casual parlance. It's like a literal animation, but
It is a mix of practical and CGI. And for the record, I thought it looked really good. I'm not really sure where exactly, like, the problems spring up for you, because I thought, like, especially when, they knew that this would look kind of silly, or that he would look kind of silly if they, had him, if they showed all of him at once. They always have him kind of sitting in the shadows, right? So that, like, you can kind of just imagine what he looks like, and, like, you occasionally will see what he looks like. It looks good.
I think the texture of him is wrong. I don't mean in the sort of creepy horror way that, they want, but just seems unreal, not in the sense that there is a god that walks amongst us and reality is warping about him, but just unreal in that, is that a fucking mannequin over there kind of way? And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if you just have a guy act him out, or you have a big fucking puppet or something, or...
Nah, I don't buy it, man. I thought it looked pretty good. I thought, like, the fact that they had, like, a physical actor there, like, having him inhabit the world, made him look 10 times as good at the very least as the fucking Al Elric.
You've thrown up things that look better than Al Elric.
Certainly, but I don't think that you're giving them enough credit here. I thought, like, I don't know, I thought their use of light and shadow with him, their use of the performance capture, especially the voice acting that Willem Dafoe lent to him, which, perfect. It was a perfect fucking performance.
I'm more than willing to admit that motion capture is difficult. They put in the work of having a guy going there, but the fucking actual just computerized texture they laid over him just doesn't look fucking good.
Yeah, it does. Okay, we're going to be going back and forth here because I thought it looked great.
This is sort of a ping pong.
After a certain point, there's not really much else to say except the fact that I thought it looked pretty good. Besides that, I think what we should probably get into is the ethos behind this adaptation and sort of how it differed from the one that they went into with Full Metal Alchemist.
So there's a bit of a telephone thing going on with this movie, and in an interesting way. Honestly, I'm sure there's a version of this outline that could land, but so much shit is goofy in this that it doesn't get there. But okay, so first off, the whole melodrama kind of thing we're talking about, like everyone's very elevated and Shakespearean. They keep that in this movie, but it's on more of a sort of CW kind of expression of bottled teen emotions kind of thing.
I'd say it's more like a Heathers sort of vibe, like a dark teen comedy drama.
I would say that it aims for Heathers and it lands in the CW is I guess where I'm getting at. Which once again is I guess getting with our fault line on this fucking movie.
I know. I think this film's problems lie less in tone and mood, which I think it does pretty well generally, with some exceptions, and more in pacing, script, and execution of scenes. This movie, just on a macro level, is not the Mind Games information warfare movie that it was in Japan, nor is it the satire about the sort of crime and punishment system in Japan that I sort of take Death Note to be. That's sort of always what I thought that this was.
Background on that. Around that time, I have no idea how close to accurate this fucking statistic is now because I was reading about fucking Phoenix Wright when I learned this, but Japan has a fascinatingly high courtroom conviction rate.
Yeah. It's kind of bad if you get arrested there. Not like quite Singapore bad, but like it's bad. Right? So I mean, like, we've got our own criminal justice problems, so it's not like I'm going to say that, oh no, don't smoke weed in Japan. I mean, don't smoke weed in Japan. But that's what that series was, right? And that is not really a story that quite works, or that's not really a space for the film to live in that quite works for American audiences, I think. So what they did is they had it be kind of like a
School shooting kind of thing?
school shootery kind of movie slash commentary about American military adventurism. In places like it was I think the school shooter thing was a little bit more obvious, but like you occasionally like you had him
with the interventionism idea. I don't mean that too uncharitably. In the way, like I'm saying they half-ass. I just don't think it's really that played into like in the balance of things that they pay attention to in this.
No, it was I think it was an element that they wanted to be there, and it never quite had time to develop or breathe or anything like that. That is at the core of what doesn't work about this movie for me, is that everything is just so goddamn breathless and rushed through and there need to be so many coincidences and shit to move the plot forward. Nothing has time to breathe. None of the characters really have that much time to develop. Their development is sort of like they are pulled through their character arc rather than, lead through it organically.
It's kind of interesting that when you look at every frame of this movie, you can see that the guy has some hard David Fincher aspirations.
Yeah, Adam Wingard's the guy's name. He comes from horror.
He has some fucking hard David Fincher aspirations, which the guy might need to select his scripts a bit differently if he's going to try to play that game.
Or, yes and no. I think script issues, certainly. I think the big fucking elephant in the room here is that this movie is 90 minutes long. I guess technically it's 100 minutes long, 10 of them are credits. But he has 90 minutes, right, to tell a story that played out over, 25 episodes. I'm not counting the last 10. They were shit. 25 episodes, 22 minutes long each. Let me do the math
For
real
those
quick.
of you who aren't acquainted of, Death Note wasn't particularly known for sticking the landing. Like, imagine if Simone Biles' legs just buckled after the last flip, and you might have an idea how Death Note wrapped up.
Okay, about 10 hours or so. Or 9 to 10 hours, right?
When we talk about this movie's pacing, though,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that the same events conveyed, paced out more naturalistically, would have saved that much of the movie. It would be better, but the outline of things that happens are still fucking silly.
No, I disagree. I think these things happened because of the time that they had. I think given more time, they would have done things differently. I think there was a whole bunch of stuff that this movie is criticized for. For instance, the reworking of Light Yagami's character from, born sociopathic, narcissist, criminal genius into kind of angry, socially stunted teenager. I don't think there's anything inherently criminal about reworking his character, especially
My problem with that is different than the average one. My problem with that is that when you made this kid less smart, you could do that. I see the idea. First off, I'm pretty sure maybe 3 people in human history are as smart as Light Yagami was in that comic at fucking 14 or 16 or whatever. But when you take that element of crackhead impossible intelligence out of his axis of the story, and the whole mode of engagement through most of the thing is this game cat and mouse, it requires 2 smart people. I feel like they don't really replace that content in this movie once they sort of take that out.
No. I think insofar as that, you are correct.
And when I talk about a point of engagement, I'm not sure that's universal terminology. So, I mean, it's like the jokes in a comedy or the punches in a karate thing. What is the thing you are sitting down for to grab your jollies by? And when it...
Well, I can answer that question. This goes from the mind games sort of, the mind games thriller that the show was, that the comic book was, to a claustrophobic sort of, I need to get away from the consequences of everything I did in Act 1 kind of thing. And I think the biggest mistake that this... No, it's not the biggest mistake, but one of the biggest mistakes that this film made was have this character be named Light. If you sort of frame this as a sort of anthology-esque sort of thing, what if the Death Note, or an Elseworlds kind of thing, what if the Death Note landed in Seattle instead of Japan in the hands of, some other, disaffected, teenage boy, right? What happens then? Then I think the events that play out become just a little bit easier to swallow, and you can sort of like accept that these characters are sort of like evocations of the characters from the original whose roles they are kind of fulfilling but differently, if they are not actually, supposed to be the characters themselves, the way that Misa, right? I think
I'm sympathetic to the idea that people got too wrapped up in this is not my beautiful house, these are not my beautiful children when it came to the characters and sort of narrative thrust of this thing, because it really does go for its own thing. I think if you're going to watch this, you're going to have to try to accept that just sort of the idea, like just the base premise, just filtered through a different lens, different setting, different creative purpose, all that. But I think that characterization of this film's fucking problems is just ignoring the fact that just a lot of the basic stuff, no context, say a movie just called Death Note just came out one day and it was this, is and feels very silly. Like, take the sprinkling of the horror kills throughout this thing, right? This guy comes from horror, so, he sees this con's like, oh, hey, I can use some of my gore chops in this film. And I guess just the gore porn, gorn. Is gorn still a word on the internet? Whatever. The gorn in this movie ranges from, sometimes I say why. Actually, no, I get why they did it. I get the point of engagement. I've watched every fucking Saw movie, but it never looks great. It feels kind of arbitrary where it is, and it's really weird to see it done this haphazardly from someone from a pure horror background.
I hate to appeal to majority there, Chief, but apparently you're in the minority in thinking this.
Well, I'll plant my feet by the fucking tree of freedom. If there are people that think the head exploding in this movie looks good, I applaud your ability to walk into 40% of other horror movies ever made and feel your eyes widen with light at the divine revelation of what this mode of violence can be.
I'm sorry, there are people who absolutely fucking hated this thing and found it to be a violation of a thing that they loved, who still thought that the fun Rube Goldberg deaths from it were kind of fun.
Well, that's them, and my name's
I'm among
Dennard.
them.
It's a weird name. It's not that common.
Well, howdy, I'm Sam, and I loved them.
Oh man,
I thought that they were silly fun and kind of, again, very Heathers-esque. In a way that I thought worked. And the whole, like, did like, that guy's head flying off look just a little bit, like it was made of, whatever the fucking, rubber, plastic, whatever that they make these prop things out of? Oh, yeah, certainly. But, like, in kind of latex? Yeah, thank you. That was Morgan just now.
Working with an assistant in the ring here? Is she fucking Maris? What kind of bullshit is this? She gonna hand you the brass knucks?
It plays out in a kind of fun, grindhousey way that I don't so much have the, it didn't take me out of it the way that it took you out of it.
Fair enough. I think that the two gears of dialogue in this movie seem to be wooden and what?
Yes, the dialogue is pretty shaky. That point I will concede.
I mean, I don't know, Pompeii was shaky. Wait, that was a volcano, not an earthquake. Whatever. Let's pretend that metaphor was beautiful.
Yeah, Pompeii was pretty well designed, but not too many cities can do that well against a volcano, like 2 miles that way.
And so when it comes to the plot in this movie, the plot sort of has like 3 distinct phases of basically falling apart. I think the first big checkpoint before you hit the Rochester wards is just
Yep, that's like, that is the part of the movie that I found completely impossible to swallow.
And I get what they were doing, like, I believe in the system, I'm not just gonna gank you or arrest you arbitrarily, but just from the point where I said, I don't do only checkmate. When L said that to him, our erstwhile detective walks to the guy and says, hey, I know you're super god, and despite all of my extra governmental powers, I'm supposed to let you run about to counter scheme. But you are going to avoid the entire apparatus of our surveillance state to plot with your waifu. It kinda lost me more than a little. Like, I was Odysseus lost. Like, I am still trying to find my way back to Rome on that one.
That scene did not work, which is really tragic because it's one of the only face-to-face interactions that the two of them have in this movie, and you know, again, it's very difficult to sort of judge this, independently of its source material, but like some of the most fun that you do end up having in, Death Note, the manga anime, is the fun interactions, like the face-to-face ones between
If he beats
L
me in
and
this
Light.
tennis game, he must be Kira.
Exactly. Once they become aware of one another, right? So that whole scene, it takes place at the diner, right? Or at a diner. That whole scene at the diner, it feels like they missed and they really fucking needed to hit in that scene of all scenes.
And things like that in the entire law enforcement interaction thing, it essentially rides on way more of a thriller wavelength. Like, you're talking about this box closing in on this guy, right? And
Yeah.
I think that, maybe these are just my fucking arbitrary genre rules or whatever, because I evidently love those as the theme that seems to be emerging from Weeaboo Hell.
Mm-hmm.
But I think thrillers that want to play off that kind of tension of, like, someone fighting for their life against situation, I think there's a much smaller margin for how dumb things in the movie get to be and for that to still work.
Go on.
Like, if you want me to buy, essentially, the danger of the situation, the things that either pull them into it or take them out of it, if it all feels silly and arbitrary, as things in this movie often do, then I think you sort of lose the base point of engagement there. And maybe that's just why my head is tilted throughout this entire movie. And I don't know, it's stuff like that, or when we find out that Elle grew up, I don't know, on the detective farm in the Rochester wards, or I wrote down the Batman program.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this bears just a little bit of explanation because it's really funny in how dumb it is. What is discovered partway through the movie, and it's part of Light's what ends up being botched play to take out Elle. It is discovered that Elle's backstory is that he was an orphan who was raised in this fucking orphanage on Long Island, and this orphanage was in fact a perhaps secret government program. I know, it was called the Rochester Ward, and the whole thing was that it was going to produce the perfect detective.
Just imagine
like the
a pile of
heart
taxpayer
dungeon
money just burning in the distance.
And it's
Man, MK Ultra fucking
and they just
kind
of breeze through this thing. They fucking breeze through this fucking like CIA shit show that this like very likely was, right? As though it was just something that you could just swallow,
and
in 5
really
minutes, because that is all the time this plot line is given.
Because then the plot hinges
no,
on
it's
finding
still
his
there
name through the Batman program. So as the not tidings in the race between these two, I'm constantly reminded of the Batman program.
I think if the low point of Full Metal Alchemist for me was the stupid fucking Winry scene in the beginning, this is definitely the low point of this movie, where they have to make up a fucking CIA counterintelligence orphan program, just so that they can get from plot point A to plot point B here, because it really does feel as though the Rochester Ward
We've got to move this bitch along.
Kind of was scotch tape in the script so that they could get. I don't actually know, because it doesn't really go anywhere, or I mean, it comes from the fact that he wants Elle out of the game, I suppose, but then after he fails, it doesn't go anywhere. That's kind of just the end of it right there.
Yeah, I guess they just couldn't think of a more economical way for there to be a threat of getting Elle's real name.
I don't even think that it needed to be. I guess I understand why it did need to be there, and that like if I can learn this asshole's real name, then I can kill him, right? But then I think this was. I know. I'm discovering as I'm thinking about it now. This seems very much like a translation issue where and not translation from Japanese to English, but translation from
one head to the other.
from L. Lolliot. That's his actual name in the he just has a mono letter name for whatever. Like L is just his name. It's just his first name. L. Lolliot in the manga to this guy here, right? Because in the original, right, I think he buys L's name, if I'm remembering this correctly, from one of the Shinigami that we meet, and there's more than just Ryuk in the original. If you've not seen it, there's at least two or three of them, mouth. And one of them had a beak. They all look kind of freaky. It was cool. Good character designs. I think as I remember, he bought L's identity from one of them, for this price. And it was like a really, really heavy price, but he managed to sort of maneuver it so that, like, I'm going to have to go back.
I remember there was a lot of launching people
right?
beneath the bus, but yeah, it was a part cat and mouse thing.
I feel like they figured that would introduce a really, like, complicated, sort of narratively heavy element that we then need to sort of drop. And then this is what they came up with instead.
I think they're starting to get frustrated with all the moving parts of the fantasy shit in this. And it said they added the Batman program, which is a way bigger ask at this point.
It does this thing where it just adds this new element to a world that is supposed to be just kind of a sort of like darker, moodier, more Atticus Rossi version of ours, except they dropped a Death Note in there, right? And then also the Batman program. So it doesn't do the film any favors, and I think we've been wringing our hands about it for a little bit too long at this point. But it was definitely the film's biggest mistake in my mind, was that plot line right there.
So something I wanted to talk about, by the way, especially since we have like this sort of fault light on this flick, is was her name originally Misa or Mika?
Misa.
I'm fascinated by the choices of Misa in this movie, because she's a better character than she was, but not by much, and we get a lot of her. I think a lot of how well you can rock with this movie comes down to how much you like the new and admittedly improved, unambiguously fine, Misa character.
I think her character becomes a little bit easier to understand and accept if you understand her to be a composite, and that is one half of Light, and then the other half went to the character named Light in this film, and then one half of Misa, because that is the character that she is, and that's kind of the role that she plays. Like, this character, or this film needed its criminal sociopath, right? And instead of Light, that ends up being the character's name is Mia. It's obviously supposed to evoke Misa, right? Who is very much a not so much unwitting tool of Light's in the show itself, but
she's got like the sort of vapidity to her in the original show, I guess.
You know what she reminds me of, or who reminds me of her is like. Chika, right? Just Chika Fujiwara from fucking Kaguya-sama Love is War. She's like, Chika Fujiwara is like this benign version of Misa Amane from Death Note, in that she's this like very bubbly, single-minded individual who will just kind of run through all the intrigue like so many fucking bulldozers and ruin everyone's plans with her single-mindedness, right? And the same is true of both characters, except it's silly in Kaguya-sama, which besides being a retelling of the Woodcutter's Tale, is also sort of a reworking of the Death Note formula. But before I get off track,
I think when it comes to me and Mia in this, while she is improved, I think that maybe it's because the love story, which, by the way, something that I will admit critics did not give this movie, is that the whole love plot between these two is approached with 200% more irony than you would expect going in. Like, it is clearly just a bad idea with bad people.
Yes.
But maybe I'm... You know how people always like to regurgitate fucking Pixar's rules? of fucking storytelling or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to always follow those. I don't think there are really laws of gravity when it comes to good narrative, but it really, really did feel that Mia and Light Turner should have been one character called Light Turner. I mean, I guess the way that this movie is structured, the final linchpin conflict is between those two, though. But I guess because I wasn't maybe as engaged by that.
Well, like so what you're saying is that it should have just because Mia Sutton and Light Turner are just a deconstructed, and not deconstructed in the writing terms, but literally deconstructed, Light Yagami from the manga. So what you're positing is that instead of having these two characters and the whole plot between them, what we should have just had was Light Yagami closer to what he is in the
yeah, I mean, I basically need this character
anime
to be someone who can like hold the fucking support beam of the movie's plot that's above him.
Okay. What I will argue is that I kind of like they had this idea and it sort of worked in places and didn't work in others. Right? They had the idea that instead of from the get-go having him be this criminal, mastermind, diabolical genius, he completes his arc by coming up with the Justice Keikaku plan. Not the same plan, obviously,
Essence
but
of.
it evokes that plan, right? That he did in the manga, right? And I get what they were trying to do. Like I said, it did not entirely work, but I liked the idea. And I do not think that works if they had folded Mia and Light into one another. Although I do also think that if they had done that, there could have been other entertaining things that they could have done. But I do really like the idea of, the Justice Keikaku coming as the climax and, sort of the big finish to an arc.
I think what falls flat for his version of the sort of Justice Keikaku thing is, in the outline, it's a good idea that he basically, starts off as just this sort of semi-normal, dejected kid, but smartish, and winds up, through the irons of conflict, turned into this sort of figure closer to a mastermind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But amidst all the heads exploding with ladders and cheerleader waifu recruitment amidst all the things that happen in this movie, I don't actually feel or see that progression. And so,
well, that's an issue of execution.
That's an issue of execution, and you have to execute the thing in the movie. That's the whole thing.
Well, I'm arguing in favor of the mission, not so much the execution. I admit that the execution was haphazard at best.
All right, fair enough. Maybe I've just grown a cold soul, and as I watch these children fail while writing for their dreams, I say, "You ruined me."
Well,
I just want to get a Mallory.
I think the point that I want to words fail me. What? Shut up. It's my favorite fucking 2 lines in that show. What I have sort of been wanting to get to through all of this, and I think the Full Metal Alchemist movie suffers from this problem too. Although there was just a whole lot of there was not a single fucking good idea in that thing's conception, the way that there were good ideas in this thing's conception, and then they just were not able to follow through on them. What I want to talk about is the larger villain present behind all of these, which is the tyranny. No, the tyranny of the 90 to 120 minutes, which is to say, why does this have to be a feature-length film? Because so much is sacrificed in both of these films, right? In trying to get this to work in the runtime that they are given, that you are kind of forced to reckon with the idea that maybe it shouldn't be this length. Maybe that it was a mistake to sort of have this number that you're working with to begin with. Maybe this works far better as a cable TV show, right? Your 8 episode or your 6 episode seasons, right? This thing Death Note, right? The anime, about 9 hours long. That's a season of television right there. That is, like a season of Game of Thrones.
So I
Um,
agree and disagree with this idea, which is sounds wishy-washy as fuck, but I promise I'm not gonna Joe Biden this shit. So, on FMA, Fullmetal Alchemist, right? I think that's a really salient point because the two genres that pulls from are like epic fantasy or just fantasy and shonen, aka the most drawn out long form fucking formats short of cracking open War and Peace.
Yeah.
So I get that. They're trying to condense the fucking French Revolution there. Death Note, you can make that lean thriller. I do think you can just make that movie. Like, not the whole thing, and this didn't even try to do the whole thing. In fact, I think one of the saner choices this movie made, other than giving Elle a sweet gun because I was amused by that, but...
The L gun. I forgot about the L gun. We almost didn't mention the L gun.
Yes,
Yeah,
L
he has an L gun.
He tries to drive angrily. It's fucking fascinating to watch. But I think this continued it to just his original comic with L and not his sequel children.
Oh yeah, Nier. Fuck that.
And it basically skipped a lot of the Mook police characters, which is also probably just a good choice for a film just sort of breezing along.
Well, there was no Matsuda, yeah.
I think you can make that thriller. Like, Death Note has a lot of sequences that are essentially sort of back and forth in the intellectual and literal tennis games, and that's not bad. That's great long-form content, but a lot of that can just go to make the thriller adaptation, I think.
Well, I'm not going to tell you or try to convince you, because I don't even believe it, that this is the best Death Note movie that they could have made with the 90 minutes that they were given. But I do think that even if there's a better version of this movie at 90 minutes or at 120 minutes, I think the version at 9 hours over 9 episodes is better than both of those things. And I think that is the format that it probably deserves.
So if you are an erstwhile aspiring network executive, come see our network pitch for Death Note, the series. We've changed all the characters' names and it's copyright free, baby. You can make some money. We can make some money. Let's make some fucking money.
It's on a cell phone now. It's just a cursed notepad app.
Seriously, man, I'll fucking do it. I write in advertising. I have no ethical standards. Creative ones, but not ethical ones. Alright, so because I've been shitting on this one the whole time, and it's not like an atomic turd, it's like a fucking D+ or some shit. What I will say, Willem Dafoe in this, just great throughout. He voices Ryuk, he does the... There is a character archetype that can be very grating and painful that is done well. The original Ryuk is done well. Honestly, with him here, the guy just has enough charm. I don't even know if the lines are there, but he just carries the essence well. Do you remember HK-47 from fucking Knights of the Old Republic?
How the fuck could I forget HK-47?
Just the original, I don't care if you meatbags live or die. it captures that wavelength there. That's amusing. Bang.
I like when he grows a philosophy in KOTOR 2, and it's like he's the same character, sort of, except now he sort of can back it up.
The actor playing L is just good. He's good at that.
Oh, Lakeith Stanfield. Yeah, like he's a fantastic, kind of slightly newer actor. I think he's definitely on the rise right now. I mean, after Sorry to Bother You, like, yeah, he's big news now, and I'm glad that this could be like a fun early venture for
given
him.
How hammy a lot of other things in this movie are, and he's also play a very elevated character in a thriller whose entire character summary has many ticks, that he doesn't jump over the line where it becomes dumb or annoying. So, I don't know, good acting, boy.
Yeah, I think as good as he is, I think the scenes that he is in are often or actually, not necessarily the individual scenes, but if you string together the scenes...
he doesn't come off as consequential, ultimately.
Well, I think he does, but I don't know, I'm going to need more time to think about this, because I was a little bit frustrated with L and his arc, and sort of how that was paced out. I would think I was more frustrated with it than I was with Lights. Um, so make of that what you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I think that Lakeith Stanfield gave the stronger performance of the two of them. I actually think that's not even
Light
in question.
is a little
He definitely did.
Just their performance quality was.
He was fine. He did what he needed to do. Nat Wolff, I think is the name of the actor. But Stanfield was great. He was a wonderful choice for this. And yet there was still something missing. And I don't think it was on him. I would think it was just, I don't know. I think the character just ends up, it's a script thing. It's a fucking script thing. The character just keeps getting lucky when he should just be smart. And it's not like he's Sherlock smart. It's just that the script twists itself
the luck
to
thing is a point,
to
especially
his
given
favor.
the whole cat and mouse thing. Like he makes progress when he's lucky, and he basically loses his prey when he's unlucky, and that just sort of makes it feel like he's not really even playing the game here.
Yeah. Which is a shame because everything else is there. Like, it's sort of like one of those things where this movie doesn't kind of hold up to scrutiny because you do believe that he is that smart, right? Because of this performance. And then, when you look at the script, you're like, wait a second. And I think, again, that's just something that needed time in order to be solved.
The thing of the throwing stars of the Rochester Awards, like, does he have L-shaped throwing stars?
That fucking
I guess
thing.
he doesn't because he has a gun. He has the L gun.
The
Just
L
going
gun.
all R. Kelly in South Park with that shit.
Oh man.
I have to say though, the second time I've seen this fucking movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
After the taxidermy experience, I do appreciate that they definitely tried something. I don't think
they had an idea.
Are, let's just say laudable, but
laudable? No. I think the attempt was laudable. I don't think the results were.
But this wasn't like Martian community theater recreating images with technical accuracy and no artistry, so that's nice, I guess.
Here's my thesis. My thesis on these two films is that Full Metal Alchemist was a thing that Death Note absolutely fucking was not, and that is cynical. And as I've said before, lazy cynicism is one of the biggest fucking turnoffs for me, for, anime and other things, right?
Feet.
And I'm just not into them or anything else. So the lazy cynicism present in Netflix Full Metal Alchemist, that is not present in Netflix Death Note. Like, Netflix Death Note has all sorts of fucking problems, but a lack of vision, even if this vision did not end up being fully realized, is not one of them.
Ah, fuck, we should have talked about Edge of Tomorrow.
That would have been, I don't know, that might have been a bridge too far. This episode's already
That's
really
a good
fucking
point.
long.
Edge of Tomorrow was a good adaptation of some weeaboo bullshit. Bang, killed it.
Yeah, it was. Very good. They did it correctly. Okay, I think it's this has been Weeaboo Hell, and it's
go
Weeaboo
outside,
Hell.
dude. Oh my god, I have to edit this. Oh my god, my life is over.
I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm gonna watch the rest of Anohana tomorrow and fucking bawl my eyes out. So we'll both be, two different types of in hell.
Hey people, whether you think this is the best episode, worst, or simply the most recent, the sun's up now. When I started editing, it wasn't.